Alachua County, we're now hearing from the mother of a Gainesville woman whose body was found today. She had been missing since February.
39-year-old Keyanta Williams, a mother of four, was found dead off a highway near the city of Alachua. Police say they learned where her body was through negotiations with a lawyer representing Williams' boyfriend, 41-year-old Kelvin Renard Bryant. He's been charged with her murder.
Hello guys, so this is a story that is really heartbreaking. Like, any story of a mother who, is murdered by a boyfriend, it really hits home and it's really sad. And so I wanted to tell her story because I think that there are lessons that can be learned in this story. Keyanta Williams was born on April the 5th of 1975. She was from Gainesville, Florida. She was one of two children. She was actually the big sister and was described to be a very good and loving and caring big sister. Keyanta Williams went to high school in Gainesville, Florida. She ended up meeting her first love, which was the father of her four children, in high school. And in high school, she became pregnant. So she had aspirations to go to the military and to, do other things in life. But when she became pregnant, she decided to take on her mother and wife duties. After having her first child and dating the father of her first child for so many years, she ended up getting married and they began their family. Within that marriage, she had three more children, so a total of four children. And, at some point in the marriage, he started cheating on her and just was like a serial cheating. And that, caused them to have many problems in their marriage. So after 9 years of marriage and 14 total years of being together, after four children later, she decided to file for divorce. So she filed for divorce in 2009, and at that particular time, she was not in Gainesville. She was in a different city, but after she filed for divorce, she decided to move back to where she was from, which was Gainesville, Florida, so that she could be close to her family, her friends, and, those that she grew up around and have the support, being that she was a, mother going to be raising four children. So she moved back to Gainesville, Florida, and, like clockwork, of course, she received the support from her family and her friends. She also was able to go back to school, and that's where she was able to go to school, and she was able to become a nursing assistant, a CNA. And, her life began to look up and, she's doing well. Life was good after divorce. And then eventually she ends up meeting a man named Calvin Bryant. So after she met Calvin Bryant, at the beginning of the relationship, things went well. They were actually together for about 4 years. And like her marriage, she began to notice that her current boyfriend, who she was with for 4 years, was starting to cheat on her. And so she began to find, text messages. She began to see dating sites that he would go on to, where he would have conversations about him being single. And like any relationship, when you find something like that out, especially when you've been with a person, you guys have somewhat built a life together. I mean, you've been together 4 years and you find that out, the breakdown of the relationship starts to happen. And so, that's what happened. The relationship started to break down and, they begin to fuss and fight a lot within the relationship about the infidelity. within the relationship. And so eventually, you know, Keontae, she was like, you know what? If you're going to date and see other people and do your thing, then, I'm not in a relationship. We're not in a relationship. And so she decided to, do her own thing and date and see other people. And so even though, she decided to do that, she was just really meeting people, nothing serious. And so she ends up meeting a guy that she really takes interest in and, starts to like and, wants to get to know more. And so because it wasn't anything serious at the moment, she decided to meet up with this guy and for them to have a date. And so she made preparations to meet up with the guy one night and go out on a date, which is what she did. She went out on a date. When she finished the date, she went back home and, to get her children, to see her children off for school the next morning. When she got home, she actually encountered her, her current guy that she, was ending the relationship with, and they got into an argument. And so because she did not want to, interrupt her children or, bring any drama to her children, she told the current boyfriend, Calvin Bryant, hey, let's get in the car and just go for a ride. I don't want the children to hear us fussing and arguing. And so they get in the car, she's driving, he's in the passenger seat, and they go for a ride. And while on this ride, they're still arguing, and he's, trying to tell her, oh, you shouldn't be going on dates. We still live together. And she's basically telling him, well, what do you care? You don't want this relationship. You've been cheating on me for years. Why, you don't want to be with me. So what do you care? It's none of your business. And so while they're in the car, they're arguing. She stops the car and she asked him to get out of the car. And so as he was getting out, he grabs the keys from the ignition and turns off the car. And he's basically is like, okay, well, you're going to put me out. Well, I'm just going to grab the keys. So she gets out the car, they're arguing, and she's like, at some point, oh yeah, he grabbed the keys and he throws the keys in the floor of the car. So she gets out the car, she walks around to the passenger side and to try to find the keys. And so as she's trying to find the keys, she kept a like a little knife in her car for, protection purposes. And so he ended up, knowing where the knife was. He grabbed the knife from under her seat and he begins to stab her. He stabbed her several times, so many times that he didn't even remember. And basically, he killed her right there on the side of the road on the highway. And so after he killed her, he took her body and he just drug her body into the, like the wooded area of the spot that they were at. And he left her there for dead. And then he disappeared. When Keyanta did not show up the following morning to get her kids ready for school, they thought it was weird. Her oldest son at the time was 17, and so he thought it was weird, but he didn't really think much of it. He figured, he would still get up, get his younger siblings ready for school and, start his day. And so eventually her mother, Keonta's mother, went over to the house because, there were some mornings she would go over to the house and help with Keyanta and help, get the kids up and get them ready and see them off to school. So when her mother was at her home and she realized that Keyanta wasn't there and that she had not heard from Keyanta, nor has the oldest son heard from Keyanta, she began to worry. And so she, gets the kids ready for school and they go off to school. And then when she still didn't hear anything, she tried to call Keyanta. Keyanta wouldn't answer her phone. And so eventually she ended up calling the police and she put in a missing report for Keyanta. So it was February the 9th of 2015 when both Keyanta and her boyfriend at the time, Kevin Bryant, went missing. A whole 24 hours went by, and the boyfriend, Kevin Bryant, showed up, and there was no Keyanta. He showed up at his sister's house. And when he showed up, he looked disheveled. He looked like, he hadn't bathed, in a few days. He didn't smell too good. He still had on the clothes that he, had murdered Keyanta in. So his sister knew something was wrong, but because he was reported as a missing person, the police were called. And when the police got there, they went and took him into custody right away. And it was right away when they found out that something was not right about him and about the whole, with Keyanta missing. Because at that point, you know, both of them were missing. No one knew where neither one of them was. But when he turned up without Keyanta, and he was, he looked the way he did, he still had on the same clothing, they knew something wasn't right. They had already started their investigations the minute that the missing person report was filed. And so they had already talked to, Keonta's kids. They had already talked to, family members who had not heard or seen Keonta. Um, they had followed up with the lead that they got where Keonta was supposed to go and see, go on that date with the guy. And so they ended up contacting him and asking him a few questions. And of course, he told them, hey, yes, we went on a date. The date went great, and that was the last I seen of her. And he was able to provide the police with, records of his whereabouts because he was a truck driver. So they kept, truck driving logs. And they also, there was a GPS so he could prove his exact whereabouts, to prove that he, yes, he went on a date, but that was the last that he seen of Keyanta, and that he wasn't even in the area the following day. And so while they had Keonta's, current boyfriend, Calvin Bryant, in custody, they began to question him. And of course, they took his clothes and they, sent his clothes in for evidence to see, if they had anything that they could find from his clothes, because his clothes were bloody. There were blood on his clothes, or Keonta's blood was found on his clothing. Also, he showed up in Keonta's car, which was also weird because you have her car, but there's no Keyanta. And so when they sent the car in to be examined, they also found blood in her car, and so it was her blood. And so after they got all the DNA tests back, which took some time, that's when they found out that Calvin Bryant was, a suspect for the murder of his girlfriend, Keyanta Williams. And of course, he denied. He didn't say anything. He wouldn't tell them anything. So for 2 months, they booked him on murder charges. And for 2 months, he wouldn't tell them where Keyanta could be found. And so after 2 months of looking and, talking to him and not really getting anything from him, Keonta's mother decided to, have the police, along with the prosecutors, ask Calvin, for a deal. And so the deal was like, hey, if you tell us where we can find Keonta's body, then instead of you getting, possible death sentence, you would only have to do, so many years. And so they took that deal to Calvin, in which Calvin did accept the deal. And he ended up taking them to where he hid Keonta's body. And, after they found Keonta's body, of course, they booked him. He went on trial, and he ended up having to do 35 years without the possibility of parole. All right. So this is a heartbreaking story. And like I said, I think that there are lessons that can be learned in this story. And one of the biggest lessons that I see in this story is, when you're with someone and there's a lot of cheating, there's serial cheating, it's best to just end the relationship and you go your way and he goes his way. If you're in a relationship and someone is cheating and, you don't want to put up with that and you want to end the relationship, probably not a good idea to end the relationship and then stay in the same home as the person. I know from, people that I know personally who were once, married, and when they were going through a divorce, they stayed in the home with the person that they were going through the divorce with. And although that may seem like a plausible way to handle things, because, of course, when you have children or when you have, things that you've built together, you have money, you have property, you have, whatever else, it may seem like a good idea. But the thing is, divorces can take a long time. I know of cases where divorce can take years, 2, 3 years. And that's a long time to be in a home with someone whom you're going through a divorce with. And during that time, many people decide to date other people. There are very few times where people are going through a divorce, where they, if the divorce is taking years, they're actually waiting years to get into another relationship. Um, that just doesn't happen. A lot of times when the divorce is taking years, people end up, dating, or not, maybe even if not dating, it could just be sex. They end up just getting with another person, whether that be, in a more serious relationship or a sexual or something. And that's when it becomes a problem, because it's really, really hard to live in a house with someone whom you're going through a breakup with or a divorce with, and you're seeing other people. It can create an environment of hostility, it can create anger, it can create aggression. Um, all of which, if you were to put them in a bowl and mix them all up together, they can be deadly, which can also create a crime done out of passion, which is what Calvin Bryant did. I believe, Calvin Bryant had been cheating. He was with Keyanta Williams for 4 years, and he had been cheating within that relationship, for a while, years, is what the family reported. And Keyanta just got tired of it. And so when she got fed up to the point where she wanted to end the relationship and move on, and she see other people, it became a problem for him. So it's almost like, okay, well, I expect for you to just put up with my cheating, but then when you go out and do your own thing, it's a problem. It's so much of a problem that he killed her over it. And that's the danger. Like, when you're going through a breakup with someone, you really have to move a different type of way. It's really not a good idea to just flat out, put the dating in another person's face like that. Like, if you're going to date, try to do it, where they don't know. Try to be as discreet as possible. If you can, try to kind of wait till till this person has moved out and they've gone on their way and you've gone your way. Or try to be as discreet as possible. Don't have it in the person's face. And so I think that the lesson, that we can learn is that, like, when Keyanta went out to go on that date, she went on that date the night before and she comes back the following morning. So him being the boyfriend, he's probably waiting for her. He probably, in his mind, there's no telling what he thought she was doing in his mind, which is honestly beside the point, because at that point, they had a conversation where she was like, it's done, we're done, it's over. And so, he was not willing for it to be over. He just, in a time of passion and they're arguing, he killed her. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen, on social media or just know people personally that get into it with someone that they're dating and they start to argue and things, go south, where they're talking, they're just totally disrespecting each other. They're saying the most gruesome things to each other. People don't realize that, when you're in the moment, that may seem like the thing to do. That's just kind of like things are just coming out that way. But that can be a very deadly moment. There are so many men and women and children. People will kill your kids too. There was just a case that I'm actually working on the content for, but a guy from Baltimore, He gets into it with his ex-girlfriend and they argue. He kills her. And this is on Facebook. He's airing this all on Facebook. Then he goes to his ex-wife's house and he kills her and then kills himself. You know, there's another story of a guy who killed his ex-wife and their 4 children. So this can be a very, very serious thing. And I just don't think people realize how serious, when you get into it with someone that you've been with, people think, oh, well, this person would never do this. This person, this person is weak. They won't do anything. I'm telling you, all it takes is a one moment, one off the wall thought, and you could be out of here. So, what is the takeaway? I would say the takeaway from this story that I think that we can all learn is that, if you decide to end a relationship, I think, if you can move with your mom or a family member or some friends, maybe you can move in with them until everything is done with, or maybe you can even send your children, to move to your parents' house or a friend or someone. And then that way, if there is any drama or craziness, it's just between you and that person and you're not putting your children in danger. Um, or if this person is, has been physically harming to you or your children, and you have evidence of it, try to get evidence of it, and present that to, file a police report, present it to the police and see if you can get a protective order, which, to be honest with you, it's nothing but a piece of paper. The person, you can file a protective order against somebody and then the person can still come find you and off you. But at least you have it on record so that, if there's any mistakes that have been made, people can be held liable, whether that be the person's family that can be held liable, or whether that be, a hotel that maybe you stayed at where, you asked this hotel to, keep you safe or whatever. I mean, it's best to have records of it than to not, because I've seen in many of these cases where the more records that you have, the better. Of course, like I said earlier, if you're breaking up with somebody or you're divorcing somebody, I get it. Like if you built a whole life with this person, you got kids with this person, it's not as easy as just leaving. I get that. And I know in some states, like if you leave the home, like if you're married and you leave the home and you don't go back for like 30 days, then that can deem you, I forget the word, but it's like you abandoned it, you abandoned the home. And so therefore, like the things in the home, it may be considered that you abandoned. And therefore, when when you're fighting it out in court, that person can kind of hold that against you. And they may be able to kind of win certain property when they use that. Like I've heard of those types of cases. And so I get it. But we got to think about it. What's more important? Is your life more important? Are the lives of your children that you can have more important? Or is it stuff? It just comes down to that. It really comes down to that. And if you have, if you're going through a situation with somebody, try to, tell people, your whereabouts. Try to tell them what's going on. Of course, somebody that you can confide in. Because if there's nothing out there, they're not going to know where to start if something does happen, you know. And so that's all I have. Like I said, I hope this was a very tragic story, but I hope that there are things that we can all learn from within the story. And, like I think it was her sister. Her sister said,
I wish that she would have done something, as in change the locks, as in move. Anything to stay away from him.
I raise my awareness, watch the signs, and be aware of them, and get out early. Keyanta's lost her life, and children have lost their parents.
Her only crime was just loving too easily and too hard and too fast.
Keyanta made the mistake of loving the wrong person and falling in love too soon and too easily. And I agree with that. That may be true. But I also would say to that is that another mistake is that when she decided to end the relationship with Calvin, the best thing that she probably could have ever done was, wait till the relationship, like he's out, he's moved on with his life, he's done, and then, she dates. But dating and then throwing that in the face of the person, and then, that will make a person snap. And unfortunately, he snapped and he took her life. Alright guys, so if you like this video and you would like more content like this, please comment in the comment section. What are your thoughts? What other lessons would you pull out of this story that were not mentioned? Do you have anything to add? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.